Hello, and welcome to Between the Lines. I'm Esther Hatch, and I'm here with Sean and Bessie, Sarah M. Eden, and Tracy Hunter Abramson. And as always, I'm so excited to be talking with you ladies. I am stilling you for a moment to talk about one of, I think, writing's most enigmatic and also essential attributes that authors need to have, and that is voice. And the reason why I picked this topic today is because when I first started writing, I started writing later in life and started going to conferences and things and learning how to write. And I would overhear these snippets of conversations of people saying things like, oh, this writing is so good, but the voice just isn't strong enough. Or, oh my goodness, I love this book. The author has such a great voice. And when I would go to classes and try and understand what voice was, it was actually kind of a little bit hard for people to explain. And if I asked straight up, I feel like you get mumbled answers that weren't totally clear. So I'm going to start off by saying, and we'll see how much mumbling happens. What is voice? Like for a new writer or somebody learning to write, what does voice mean? And yeah, let's just start with that. What is voice?
Well, if you don't ask someone, no, I'm just kidding. You can't toss out the possibility of mumbling and not. I think one reason voice can feel confusing is because we use that same term to refer to a character voice, but also the author's voice. And so because we use the same term, I think that can be a little bit confusing. When someone will say the writing is good, but the voice wasn't there, or this author has a great voice. So that's like author voice. And that is really hard to define. The way I've always kind of explained it and had it explained to me is it's an author's unique style and approach to their writing. It's everything from narrative style, which can include point of view and how deep you are in point of view, to tone, to the way they use language, their sentence structure, the pacing, their approach to humor, the types of characters they tend to write, the types of situations they tend to get those characters into. It's all of those kind of elements woven, put together.
We use words.
Yeah. Part of my author voice is I don't know the past tense of weave. All of those things combined, that when you read a book, especially by an author you've read before, you go, oh yeah, this sounds like them. Or yeah, this is that person's book. When it's done well, it adds another layer to the writing. It adds an element that's both interesting and unique. And I think that's what's often meant when people say this book lacked voice or this author has a great voice. It's that extra layer that makes it their story in a way that draws readers into it.
I should have asked you at those conferences.
Yeah, sure. She didn't mumble for very long. So I don't know whether I should thank Esther for asking the question or Sarah for answering it, because now I finally know what voice is. But I've had a couple of experiences with this voice that I think are just so interesting to me. People who know me really well, who read my books, have told me repeatedly that when they read my books, they hear my voice in their head as though I am reading them the book. I think that's a little bit weird, but they love it. But I'm assuming that that's my voice coming through in my writing. Absolutely. The other thing, which is similar but a little bit different, is Tracy and I joined Paige Edwards and A.L. Sowards, and we wrote Heirs of Falcon Point together. And when we put the manuscript together, all four of us had written portions of it, and we sent it to our editor. And I remember saying to Tracy, do you think Sam, that's the name of our editor, will know who wrote what? And then I asked Sam, and she just looked at me like I was crazy. And she said, of course I did. And It's because she recognized our voice. Here are all these words on the page, and she could pick up exactly when one author began and one author ended. And it was because our voice is different.
And it ironically, that was it was a very enlightening experience, because every time one of us would tweak something of somebody else's, she could still even tell that, like, she's that good. Ironically, I was just at a writers conference in New York a few weeks ago, and it was one of the only times I've ever gone through this where there was this group of people all together, and everyone's analyzing everyone else's writing, and it was like the first chapter of the book. And the one thing that multiple people said, probably like half the group said something about how I write with authority. And I never really thought about it that way, but what it really comes down to, I think, for our voice is that we're writing in such a way that our readers buy into our world, and they trust the world that we have created on the page, and this fictional world becomes a reality to them. So I don't know. That was my take on voice. I didn't mumble, but I'm probably wrong.
No, maybe that's what's so fun about voices. I don't think anyone's wrong. Like, it is kind of unique to each different author. It's, to me, I was thinking about it just as I was listening to you guys talk. I feel a little bit like when you meet someone in real life and you're like, ooh, I like this person. I feel like there's kind of that element with writing where you open up a book and you start reading and you're like, ooh, I like this. I like how this author is writing. I enjoy the way they're laying out their book, or it could be so many aspects of it. And that's probably kind of their voice coming through.
Mm-hmm.
So I think we've kind of talked about how each of us have a voice that might be recognizable, maybe not as like us, but as like our writing style. But most of us write like in different time periods and genres or genders and ages. And I'm just curious how that affects your voice when you're writing such different things.
I think some aspects of an author's voice will have to change if you're switching genres or eras. Things like word choice. You can't use the same words in a contemporary as you would in a historical. So some of those will change. Pacing's going to change depending on your genre. Sentence structure can change depending on the characters you're writing. So some things are going to have to change, but I think there are aspects of an author's voice that is just their unique way of telling stories that are going to carry over. I think this is true with all of us. The kind of humor that we infuse in our books is found across all of our books because it's part of that intrinsic aspect of our author voice. Characterization, we're going to see that tends to be similar. The types of stories we tell, the themes that tend to weave themselves into our stories, those carry through. So even when some aspects of author voice have to change because the story needs it, there are some core elements of it that are carried through. So that even if you're jumping from a contemporary to a historical by the same author, you go, no, this is the same author. I'm in good hands here because you've enjoyed that voice in previous books. So I think some aspects of it will have to change, but at the heart, the voice tends to stay similar.
Yeah, I agree. I think that, like, I know that I'll get into those like shorter sentences when I'm writing suspense and things like that, but even if I try to write a romance, it always ends up having like some kind of underlying suspense element in it anyway, even if it's just sports or something, or a health crisis or whatever. But the one place that I really noticed, the only place I've really noticed where my voice truly changes is when Sean and I write together, because the two of us together create a different voice than either of us by ourselves. Because I think both of us, we just blend to make it compatible. And which co-authoring for, I know a lot of people, is really a struggle, but for us, because we could find that blend, it's worked beautifully for us. So
yeah, that's so interesting, because I've never written with someone before, and I wonder how that would go. But I think when I get into, because so I've written contemporary and I've written historical, mostly historical. I write male point of view and female point of view, and I really do feel like as authors, we do need to tweak some things dependent on those things. And it gets kind of shifts into that other part of voice that Sarah talked about at the beginning, where there's also the voice of your characters. And so I do feel like as authors, we have to be careful that all of our characters don't have the same voice, and it's our voice, maybe, you know what I mean? But to like tweak in a way where like even if something might be really funny and you have this great joke and it is like the type of humor your readers have come to expect from you, if that character or that time period doesn't fit that joke, well, you can't quite use it.
Right.
So I do feel like it does make a difference in your voice, what genre you're writing in, and which characters you're writing. So I think there are some subtle changes, but you still keep like that overall like that connection you have with your readers, I would say. Yeah.
Right.
And I'm just sitting here thinking, I have really brilliant friends. They know all these answers and yes to everything. They are anyway. So I'm learning along with our listeners. So thank you.
Okay,
She
on
wants
that note, yeah.
Now that you don't need to ask any more questions because you figured it all out, Esther.
This one's just for you, Sean. No, just kidding.
Oh, no. I'm feeling the pressure. Okay, I have to go first.
I'm joking. But so as you switch from one genre to the next, or one book to the next, or one project to the next, are there any things that you do as an author to make sure you're getting the voice right for that particular book?
Well, I do switch genres and I also switch eras. And it does take a mental adjustment. I usually give myself about 2 weeks to get in the groove because it takes about that long for the language to change. This is going to sound really strange, but I hear my characters speak in my head.
Right.
And
It doesn't
so
sound strange at all.
yeah, and so I hear them speak with their accents and with their colloquialisms. And so when I'm writing a medieval, the characters are using words like mayhap. And when I'm writing a contemporary, they're using words like cell phone. And and they're different. And so when I do write with Tracy, I would say 9 times out of 10, I'm coming off a historical when we start writing together. And she knows she has to give me about 2 weeks grace before those old words stop
Mayhaps.
entering. Yes, they stop entering the manuscript. And sometimes I have to go in and actually change. And it's not even just the words, it's the phrasing. It's the way the sentence structure is put together is different. And so that aspect of it definitely takes an adjustment.
Yeah. I often will go back and read books that I've already written before, especially within that series. So not even the whole books, like just passages. So like if Sean and I are getting ready to write another one together, I'll go through and read a few passages of something that came before, like maybe a beginning, middle, and an end of something. Same thing with when I was with All My Saints Squad, I would go through and just pick up, like, first of all, trying not to, my editor's great. I should say our editor, we all share the same one, that she's great about saying, you know what? No, they didn't like the eggs in the mess hall last book. So we need to not have them snubbing their nose up at that on this. Okay, fine, I'll burn the toast. So it's little things like that, but it's just trying to get in the mindset and in the humor and voice of those characters, I think is really important.
Yeah, my approach is so similar. If it's a new installment in an established series, I'll go back and read at least portions of previous books to kind of get that series unique variation on my voice in my head. If I'm switching eras or locations, like if I've just finished a Western set in the American West, now I got to jump to a Georgian era book set in the upper class of England. I mean, the whole, like Sean was saying, the whole cadence, the whole sentence structure is different. And not just when the characters are speaking, but narratively it will be as well. And so that gets infused into your voice as an author. So sometimes I will watch movies set in that era or listen to audiobooks by other authors to help get that sound back in my head again and kind of remind myself of how I tell stories in that, time and location. So very similar.
Yeah, I love that. I think one of the reasons I was thinking a lot about voice is I did make a switch to modern rom-com, which was so different than historical.
Right.
And the one thing I remember when I made that switch is I was like, I want to get the voice right for this type of book, which to me means like snappy, funny, a little bit more fast paced. And I don't want it to sound like I've got 18th century people talking. so,
Right.
so I read a lot of contemporary rom-coms anyway, but definitely did some reading in that. I changed my point of view to like first person present tense, which is pretty popular in that genre. And little things like that, it like added so many contractions. Like it does so many. I mean, I thought I caught them all and then would go over again and again. Lots of find and replaces, and still like I'm so used, I guess in historical it works to say cannot, does not, and like that just comes out naturally from my fingers. So that's part of my natural voice, I guess. I blame my fingers more than my voice though.
Love it.
Because I don't even know that I'm doing it. And so I thought I was putting contractions in that book and then had to go through and like do a few passes for contractions to change. But like that overall did change like the voice of that book. Now, there are elements, the whole reason why I was comfortable writing a rom-com is like, I love humor in my books and I love romance. And so like, I feel like I have the right elements as my own personal voice, but like to get the voice right for that book was a little different than getting the voice right for my historicals. And so that it was actually a really fun process. I really enjoyed it. And it was fun to see like, hey, I think I pulled that off. So, every once in a while I pick up a book and I'm like, wow, this person just really nailed their voice for like as soon as I open the book, I can kind of see like what this book is going to be based on their voice. And so I was just curious if you guys have any elements that stand out to you as when you see like a good example of voice. Like what does that mean? What is a good example of voice when you're reading someone else's work?
Yeah, I think there are a few we could pull from. One that jumped to mind for me is when the author's voice, which we've talked about, is kind of the way an author tells a story, everything from humor to situation to narrative style. When that and the voice of the characters meshes really well, because even when we're narrating, we're writing between the dialogue stuff, we're telling it from a point of view. And so we have to bear that in mind when we choose the words we're using, the sentence structure. So when an author can come at it to where their voice as an author is still there, but it fits so well with the character and the story they're telling, I love that, because you don't get pulled out of the story. You feel like you're deeply entrenched with this character while still this is the author you've come to love. And it's that type of story. So when they can make those two things work really well together, I love that.
Yeah, I do too. And I feel like for me, there's a few genres that really like draw me to voice. And one of them is the rom-com drama. So like drama genre where like I love when like on the first page I might laugh or smile, like, or if I keep my smile throughout the book, I'm like, that's somebody who understands what the voice of a rom-com should be, or like their natural voice lends itself so well to that. Another example I can think of, and this goes more towards character voice, but there was a book I read where it was told from probably like 5 or 6 points of view, and it was all first person. And I think they did put the names at the top, which they often do in that situation, but like you could have removed that and I would have known within a sentence or two which character it was. Like without a doubt, like the gruff people were gruff, the teenagers were teenagers, I mean, it was pretty fascinating to like just see like how well that author captured character voice. It was pretty interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think the only thing I can add to that is, for me, when a character seems so real to you that you forget that someone created it and that they're not actually real people, that's when you know the the voice is completely nailed.
And I think also like humor, when somebody can make me laugh and I'm so attached to the characters, but again, it's like Sean was saying, it's like we forget that these characters aren't real. So I think that's another little piece of it.
Yeah. Well, I hope everyone's enlightened a little bit on this and not more confused. But I do think it's
Both
like
are possible.
both are possible. I do think it's talked a lot about in the writing community for a good reason. Voice really does grab your readers and keeps your readers connected to you. So I think that's such a wonderful thing about voice. To those of you listening, I hope you find the voices you're looking for. If you're a reader, if you're a writer, I hope you can develop and grow your voice in the ways you're looking to. And hopefully we didn't leave you even more confused than when we started. Until next time, see you again on Between the Lines.